Morning guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Massive drama going down last night in the European side with Vitality versus Heretics getting very spicy indeed for a number of different reasons. The Vitality super team seems to be struggling as it stands, with Heretics with a massive victory to try and get their season back on track, but that was not the key storyline of the series. Sayf finding himself under fire here from multiple angles, not just because his in-game leading didn't seem to work out, but also for some other comments, shall we say, of the day. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Roster changes potentially happening elsewhere as well, with rumours about Loud making another change. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Let's start here because challenges happened yesterday and there was some, well, Cubit Academy played Winthrop University. This is a big game because Winthrop are a good team and not to be taken lightly, and it was actually a really competitive series. But in the end, Cubit, they got the job done. Redux and Ismoke, Scuba, Knights, T-Dog, those boys, they got over the line in 3. After Winthrop took the map 1 Lotus, they bounced back on the Icebox 13-11 with a massive offensive side. It's interesting for Cubit, isn't it? Because they can't win Ascension because Sentinels are in the Pro League, so like they can't come up because it's a Sentinels team. But there's still potentially a lot to be learned and gained, of course, from having the run that they potentially will do this year. And then the Haven was an absolute banger, 14-12 Redux with a sensational final map. So competitive series, as you might expect, really, there right now. There was good reaction to it, as Redux says. 2-1 Winthrop. Those guys played hard. Fair play to them. And obviously running the Omen, like Reed Omen he's talking about, right? Which, yeah, it's interesting note anyway, because on the final map it seemed to work out kind of well. Still, with Redux, like, continuing to improve and play better, it always does raise a couple of questions about what the future of the Sentinels team is if they don't get the results they want for the rest of the year. Of course, there's always been talk since the very start of the season about whether Redux to the starting Sentinels team is something to consider at some point when he is old enough to do so. And I think he turns 18 in a couple of weeks' time. So, like, the option is maybe there relatively shortly if required. Now, I will talk about the other games. You know what, let's just do the other games quickly first of all, because YFP took down Funhavers. QOR were 2-1 against SRB. This is actually a really big game in the context here because, you know, SRB have looked difficult to beat lately, but QOR with Nerve and those guys come out and deliver an absolute masterclass on the map 2 and map 3, 13-4, 13-8. You're not likely to see that all that often. So, you know, big games really. Like, it is the Swiss stage, so it doesn't matter that much if you win or lose at this particular moment. But just to look at the fact that M80 lost to Ambrosia, and then Ambrosia though then go on to get 2-0'd by TSM. Yeah, there's definitely matchup related stuff here where certain matchups are better for some teams than others. But there's plenty of takeaways here from these series, even though it is very early days. But it's TSM, QOR and Cubit. They are the teams that advance to the 2-0 side for now, and there'll be more matches to come, of course, as you guys can see right here to close out the second round. M80 versus Burger Boys is a big one that I'm keeping an eye on, really, because M80, they need to start getting some wins on the board, especially with what they've committed to making it work again this season. Now, this is what I was also going to mention. Leviathan, I don't really know what's going on with this franchise. They're in such a weird position, really, because they're a Latin American franchise, but I think to many fans in that region, they simply don't feel like it at all. And this is another such example. Like, no issues with Curry. I think he seems like a reasonable guy and, like, entertaining character, and he's joining LEV as their new content creator. But understandably, a lot of LEV fans, if there even are any left, are like, hang on a second, he doesn't seem to precisely represent what type of brands LEV are trying to be, especially when their pro team has gone through some similar interesting changes and none of them have really worked out. I'm sure that King at some point is hoping for a proper organisation, and there's a very good reason why Aspas just left. So, you know, you get lots of replies, such as, I mean, this is like one kind of classic example really here of the replies, and to say, look, at least a Spanish speaker or somebody. But, yeah, so there's many similar, like, reply. I mean, I'm sure this says something similar, a total lack of respect for the community. Curry has always spoken badly of Latino players. Leviathan does not represent us. I hope things change because it's already a mismatch. Neither Latino pros nor creators. So I think it kind of sums up the feeling, really. Obviously, Curry's going to do a tweet about it that he ran through Google Translate because it's not like he speaks Spanish. So, well, I don't think he does anyway. So, I mean, yeah, intrigued to your perspective in the comments below. LEV are just in a bit of a shambles, really, from all angles right now, and that does not seem especially likely to change anytime soon. But let's talk about the drama in Europe, because, man, this was a big day. So Liquid played for esports, and they got a big win here. This is actually a really comfortable victory. I mean, for esports, to me, they're like the gatekeep team in a way. Not the gatekeep, but like they're the benchmark team where if you can beat FUT Esports, certainly if you can do it comfortably, then you can be a serious threat. And after making the change where Kamek was gone and Team Liquid initially, it didn't look like it was going to work out. This series, it really did. I mean, certainly the map 1 Lotus was a 13-1 demolition job, and even after that, the split back on Liquid's pick after a 6-6 half, they got the job done on the defense, and Serial was their highest rated player, at least, on the Astra on the final map of the series that they played. So just nice to see maybe that Team Liquid are turning a bit of a corner. Of course, the Kamek for Serial change was controversial to say the least after the solid start to the season that Liquid had, but maybe it's proving to be paying off for now. But the series that many were waiting for yesterday was this one. Team Vitality versus Team Heretics. The Vitality God Squad that they tried to form for the season, that sure, they started the year in a very positive manner, but that's not necessarily guaranteed to be maintained, and right now it doesn't necessarily look like it. Heretics were the other way around. They had an excellent year last year, but didn't quite capitalize on that at the start of this season. Looked like they were going to regress to some great extent, but we know that they've still got the talent there and the potential underlying the surface. In their previous 7 encounters, Vitality had won every single time. And this time was different because Vitality went down 2-0 to Heretics, and this was not a close series at all. And, well, before we discuss the series, I'll share what Sayf had to say during the series, and then we'll come back to that a little bit later.
7-5, and my mom is gonna give us a blood.
This confuses me from multiple angles. Firstly, why Sayf would even say that in a bit, like, I don't get it. And second of all, why the broadcast team would actually publish it, right? Because it didn't have to be done. This did not have to be broadcast publicly on the broadcast, but it was, so it is what it is. Now, of course, Vitality in this moment, they, despite the fact that Sayf was 28 and 28, I mean, look at him, 1.04, like on the Sova, sure, great performance, right? But of course, the team got clowned, and Miniboo on the Neon, certainly on the Icebox, was an absolute menace, and the Haven was not much better. It was 13-10 on the Haven in the end. Heretics got the job done there. Sure, that was their pick, but Vitality on the Icebox, of course, a map where Durka and Fnatic historically were just so strong. Kicks had an awful map here. Miniboo and Woot had a brilliant one, 13-6. Heretics get a comfortable 2-0 win. So, look, my questions about Sayf are not really on the comment. It's more so about the context of the team. Obviously, Sayf, as a very talented individual player, there's no doubt, but, you know, there have been many individual talented players in the history of not just VALORANT, but, you know, just FPS esports in general. It happened many a time in Counter-Strike. You get a very talented player who says, yeah, I can in-game lead, no problem, I'll call the shots, I'll call the strats, I'll make it work. And maybe it doesn't work, right? And this is the question on having a proper in-game leader, as it were, that certain teams have, whereas Sayf has kind of stepped into that role, and, well, it was okay at the start of the season, but this could potentially be a very telling result. If you get slapped around by Team Heretics like this, especially with the super team, and of course they made the change. They made the recent change with Zyfoff coming in to try and get even better. And initially it looked okay, but this was a test of a series, and it was a test that was failed with flying colours, if that even works. So Vitality go down. Of course, lots of the reaction was to whatever the hell was going through Sayf's mind at this particular moment, and even Jake is like, what could possibly be the context for what Sayf said? And even as, you know, Red Bull says here in the replies, I'd be so caught off guard if one of my teammates said that, which I think is maybe a fair point as well. Like, are you not going to get checked out at a moment like that? I don't really know. Weeded says Sayf ain't never living that one down. So people are calling him Sayfmund Freud, right? Like, those of you out there who know will know what people are getting at with that one. But, you know, then people kind of took the adjustment to say, okay, what about Sayfmund Fraud? Because maybe he's a fraudulent in-game leader. So that's what I eventually put on the thumbnail, because it was a big conversation topic of last night. Before we close the video, some scrims to go through, and one very interesting one in here. So Envy were playing LEV. This was 15-5, which is definitely a notable result given, you know, this is a Challengers team, and maybe not the best Challengers team, but certainly a very strong Challengers team that can cause some serious damage potentially. Crew were playing someone. They were down, you know, well, they were up 11-2. This guy slammed Val, was down 2-11. But this was the interesting one. So Loud were playing NRG. As we can see, Luxo's here, DG Zan's here, Toys is here. So Toys is back, right? That's the notable thing. Toys is back in, and we've got Marda Som on the other side. So Loud have made a change. They obviously made the change. Toys was gone. Luxo was back in. He played well, and the team was still bad. So, what are they doing? Is it Vinny? Because I don't think we 100% know. We're not sure whether it's whether it's Vinny or whether it's Karanzan. I don't think it can be, like, there's no way they drop Karanzan, surely. I mean, but therefore Vinny's the in-game leader, right? So maybe the decision is, and maybe it's the right one, like, if I had to guess, it's probably because Vinny was not performing well. You know, I'd imagine that what they've said is, all right, guys, you know, Vinny, you're out of here. We're not going to bother with a leader. We're just going to run around and try and get kills. And maybe that worked in scrims. Maybe it works in reality too. I don't know. We'll see. But Loud, it seems, are making a change. NRG were up 13-7 on someone else at some point as well. Sentinels played EG. This was 5-7 at this particular moment. But very much on Twitter, your thoughts and a comment. Just one final thing was this I thought was pretty cool because, yeah, it does sum up some of the things we've been talking about, really. LEV, this is public engagements per post, and all of 2025 so far. Kind of crazy to think that Cubit Academy are third on a list that includes all of the pro teams. You know, Cubit Academy are cooking 100T, C9, NRG, MIBR, etc. You know, G2 are right down here as well. EG have actually done a bit better. I mean, they're still kind of bottom, but they're actually above Leviathan, which is kind of impressive. These are some of the numbers that Riot Games will at least keep in mind when it comes to deciding who keeps their partnership spot in 2027 and beyond. I mean, Sentinels, Loud, even if Loud don't do very well, they're still a massive organization that represents their region well. So I don't think they're going to go anywhere. It is, you know, we're talking Furia, we're talking EG, we're talking Leviathan, certainly. That will be under fire here to some degree. But very much into your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
I put in my Starbucks order, park my car, walk across the street, grab my Starbucks, come up, turn on TacticalRab. It's like the perfect length to eat my breakfast at my desk. That's like the perfect 10-minute
It's like
Starbucks.
watching the news.
Yeah, it's like watching the news. My 10-minute TacticalRab video while I eat my Starbucks.